Camera technology is getting better and better. 6K, 120 FPS, full frame, HDR capable, Netflix approved cameras are almost the standard these days. You pretty much can't go wrong with any of them. At the same time, filmmakers seem to be fighting against that leap in image quality in search of the enigmatic film look. I personally have a lot of opinions about the so-called film look, big shocker there, and we all have hopefully read and watched Steve Yedlin's diatribes on the subject via his website. But generally it seems what people are looking for are imperfections that prove that what you're seeing is film. In the same way that the VHS or DV look that's hilariously becoming more popular these days is essentially the presence of scan lines and washed out colors, the film look primarily seems to be thought of as having the presence of grain, halation, bloom, and gate weave. Since the perfect footage, whether it be from film or otherwise, can look essentially indistinguishable from modern digital and vice versa, we seem to want to highlight the inherent and potential faults of any medium to elucidate the fact that what you're seeing is presumably that medium. It's my belief that in our ever-disposable digital world where everything is here one second and gone the next, we've become sort of romantic about the things that have endured or come from the before times. And one of those things is film. If we have a film or video that was or looks like it was shot on film, psychologically, in my opinion, we seem to hope that it will imbue that piece of work with gravitas, since it was made or looks like it was made with a medium that endures and is more substantial in some way than something that is more modern. If you dig deep, you can find colorists and DPs talking about the differences in color response between film and digital, but after a certain point, applying that knowledge is really just for you, as the average audience member doesn't and wouldn't know the difference. The majority of people wouldn't be able to look at a still taken from a movie or a photo taken on film and call out exactly what film stock it was shot on without extra context clues. For instance, we know Cinestill just by virtue of the fact that the anti-halation layer is missing, and therefore there's a ton of red halation around the point sources and the edges of overexposed areas. One can guess whether or not a photo was shot on Portra pretty easily if you've seen enough of it, but also because it's by and large the most available and popular film to shoot. Stuff like that, 5219, you can pretty much guess every movie has been shot on that on film these days. Now, I just watched Demolition Man last night, shot by Alex Thompson in 1993, and none of the aforementioned defects are present, but it still carries a certain look to it that digital has yet to replicate, which comes down to a large number of things, not just the fact that it was shot on film. You could honestly pick a movie off your shelf, and I would bet that you wouldn't see any intense grain, halation, or weave, because usually filmmakers were trying to get away from those aberrations. They were faults. But that was then, and this is now, and today we have Dehancer. Dehancer is a plugin that easily allows you to add all of those delicious defects to your footage, as well as simulating 60 different films, both motion picture stocks and still stocks, to get your footage looking exactly as nostalgic or not as you'd like. Now, the people at Dehancer have sent me a review copy of the program, but they haven't seen this review, which this is. I know I started off with a diatribe, but yeah, so there's your ethics statement. I've spent a ton of time on my own figuring out how to replicate these film looks in Resolve over the past couple year or two, some of which are kind of elaborate to execute. And what's nice with Dehancer is that it does all of the heavy lifting for you in one node. Plus, you don't have to dehance your footage. You can use it simply as a grading tool if you'd like, utilizing it as a kind of a beefed up color space transform and look applicator all in one. I'm actually planning on testing a few of their film stock simulations against the real thing in a sort of part 2 of this review at some point in the future. But for now, I can say that they all do look quite nice. And overall, the program does an excellent job of giving your footage that aforementioned image in our mind of film, that sort of nostalgic thought. The plugin is very simple to use, conceivably allowing you to do an entire grade on one single node. You've got your input, which is your camera or your gamma and color space. You've got film simulations, exposure and contrast controls, a kind of printer light set of sliders for color correction, grain control, halation and bloom parameters, vignette control, and breath and weave adjustments. You can enable or disable any of those effects to fine-tune the look you're going for with a simple on-off toggle under each of them. My super basic workflow with the plugin has kind of been to have a node before Dehancer that does any sort of base or creative grading that I might need, usually just saturation, but maybe a little contrast, something like that, just a personal taste. And then in the Dehancer node, I'll adjust the exposure comp, pick a film profile, which I dig pretty much all of the motion stocks, favoring the 5219 and Eternia emulations, but I'll get to that in a second. Then I'll dial in the tonal contrast. I'll usually jack up the color density to 100, color correct the image using the color head tab, which is the printer light sort of thing. Dial down the grain to my taste because depending on the shot, it can be a little heavy, heavy-handed in my opinion. But then I'll adjust the halation so it's subtle but still present, and then usually I'll add some vignette because I like it. I found I don't tend to use the bloom or the breath and weave parameters just because they kind of take me out of it. If that makes any sense, like they dehance the image too much. If I want bloom, I'll use a filter. I don't want my image to look like it's been shot on bad stock, which is the breath parameter. And weave is an artifact of projection usually, and you're more than likely watching my stuff on the internet, so it doesn't make sense. It's too additive. You can read about how Dehancer creates their film profiles on their website. They're going so far as to sample under and overexposed versions of each stock as well, so you can creatively decide exactly how your image should look if you're attempting to replicate that. But simply put, it seems that they're doing their due diligence and really putting in the work to make these emulations accurate. It really does depend on the shot as to which profile might look best, but I would probably be leaning on the Agfa Color, Vision 3 Tungsten stocks, and the Pro 400H and Eternal looks the most for my work. The great thing about this plugin is there's just so many options that you can easily find your own look and style within them, so we won't all be making this stuff that all looks the same, you know what I mean? I found myself not liking the Kodak 250D or 50D looks at first, and then sure enough, I tried it later on a completely different clip, and it looked pretty great. So the program does encourage and reward experimentation. Also, something I've noticed is that while the Resolve Film Grain OFX is great, I do prefer the Dehancer grain algorithm. It just looks way more cohesive with the image, like the way that grain responds in film, whereas the Resolve OFX can look almost like an overlay. Obviously, with some tweaking, you can get the Resolve version dialed in just fine. I certainly have. But the Dehancer grain just feels better, so there's that. Once again, Steve Yedlin has shed some light on the differences between just straight up scanned grain and an algorithmic approach, and I recommend you look into that. Spoiler alert, algorithmic approach kind of better. I will say, as a Windows user, the plugin is kind of slow. I was getting about 5 to 16 frames per second playback of 4K footage on my system, which is an i7 7700K GTX 1070, 64 gigs of RAM, depending on the drive it's reading off of and how many modules I'm using. But the gang at Dehancer says they're working on that, but for right now it's really optimized for Metal Mac systems, apparently. I'm really looking forward to the day when the Windows version is optimized, but I'm also working on 4K footage with a 4GB video card, which Dehancer's system requirements page specifically says isn't a great idea. I should probably have about 8 or more, so that's partially on me. We really are at the point where reasonably affordable tools truly can give us the big budget looks many of us are after, and I'd be comfortable slotting Dehancer in there among them. Now, at $350, it is more expensive than Resolve itself, but if you're in a position where you want the speed of having, a one-node solution to your grades, and you or your clients are after this kind of look, I can say it's definitely worth giving a shot. And after coloring a couple music videos or something with the program, you could see it paying itself off pretty easily. Plus, Resolve is very inexpensive for what it is. So what we'll do is I'll now take you into Resolve, show you the program, show you the kind of looks you can get real quick with some of my footage, and hopefully we'll get you out of here in a tight 15, you know what I'm saying? So now we'll kick over to Resolve. All right, so here we are in Resolve. I'm going to walk you through Dehancer and then give you some of my tips or how I use it, and then I'll kind of show you how you can do something similar without the plugin, but it's not quite the same. But it's just, you know, the like I was saying, the film emulation that I've been working on myself, and on the backs of giants. Other people figured it out. I just kind of followed through. Anyway, so here is footage I shot. This is my friend Sienna Lennon. She's a photographer wearing one of the coats. We're going to switch her out. And this is Kara Solik, the model, and my sister actually designed all the jewelry she's wearing. And in this timeline is just a bunch of test footage that we shot at the beginning of 2020. I shot this on my C500 Mark II with a Nikkor 50mm sitting behind an Anamorph X anamorphic adapter. And so it looks really nice. And so this is the timeline I use to kind of just test grades and looks and various things, because it's got a lot of good stuff going on, you know, skin tones, colors, green, sky, whatever. And it's in the sun, and, you know, it's just kind of like a best case scenario. So we will chuck Dehancer on here, and as you can see, it's green, and it's not supposed to look like that. So I'm having a little bit of trouble working with this ACES thing right now. So we will just, you could, if you wanted, do a color space transform right here to 709, and then just use 709. But, you know, experiment around, because why not? Right now they only support the C200 and the M50. They say they're going to add more cameras, so hopefully the C500 comes around eventually. But I did shoot this on log 3 for whatever reason in Cine Gamut. So C200 log 3 Cine Gamut looks close enough. Here's where you would check your profiles. So I'm going to pick one of these first. I really like the 500T. So I'm going to click that, and as you can see, it's kind of low contrast and a little bright. So in the input area, your exposure comp, and I don't really know what defringe does, but your exposure comp is where it's just treating it like digital. There's no like emulation here. So this is just literally where you're going to get that kind of situated. And this footage is a little bright. And so I'll bounce between this and then the print emulation parameters, which the exposure operates differently, right? So if I bring the exposure comp down, you can see it's kind of like just doing an offset. You know, it looks relatively similar, where everything kind of gets darker at the same volume. I don't know how to put that, but with the print emulation, you can see as you get lower, it is behaving like as if it was underexposed, which is a really nifty, cool little tool right here. I really like the way that this behaves. So here I will bring that down just a little. Honestly, it's probably fine. Let's just leave it. We've got our Vision 3 500T selected. This is where you can mess with the black and white point if you so choose. That can be a handy method of expanding your footage, like it says. And then the exposure, tonal contrast, and color density is where a lot of the magic starts to happen. So I jack this up to 100 because this isn't saturation, this is color density. So this is kind of a property of film, is that saturated colors are richer. They're not quite vibrant in that sense. Vibrant is like a digital thing where it like a neon look, whereas saturated colors tend to be darker in value on film generally. And again, I'm not like a color scientist, but I believe that's the case. So first we're going to raise the contrast, and I'm going to lower the exposure a little bit. I'm going to turn on the analog range limiter to kind of keep everything sort of squeezed a little bit. And I want my highlights up here to be around, you know, 60, 70, because that's kind of correct for film. And we're going to kind of do that maybe. I find that when you're looking at movies on the scopes, you know, skin, honestly, most things are like under 36, but we're out in the, you know, sun, so that's not quite appropriate. But highs and bright white is kind of in the 60, 72 range. You blow out at 80. And then, you know, the bulk of your stuff is kind of 50, 48 here and under. So a little tip there. But one thing I'll do is I'll have a node previous. So if I'm not quite getting the look I want here with these tools, I'll just have a node previous, and you can use your standard tools to help yourself out a little bit. So like, let's say I wanted the lift, maybe a little extra or a little less contrast maybe. You know, move your pivot around. You can use the tools to your advantage, but I think we can probably get away just using Dehancer. So let's say I like that. And one thing I have been doing is I'll bring the saturation up to like 60, 75, just because I want it to look a little better. Not better, just, you know, more color. And so that's our print emulation. And then down here, you've got the color head, and this is kind of like printer lights. So you've got your RGB and your yellow, your CMY. And so that's how you can do your color correction. And this is how we would correct film back in the day. And when I say we, I mean the film industry as a whole. Obviously, I never worked at a color lab, but I did shoot film, and I would send it off to Photochem, and they would send it back to me looking great. Shout out to Photochem. And so the 500T preset is one that kind of comes out naturally looking pretty good and doesn't necessarily need adjustments. There's some, like if we were to switch over to the 250D, see, this is incredibly contrasty and sort of blue. So I'll show you what we can do here. So again, I'll adjust the contrast, expose down. See, it's like still super contrasted. Maybe bring this down a little bit. Something like that. This is not a clip where the 250D is the best choice. So again, make sure that you are making the right choice for your footage. So if you wanted a super contrasty look, you could do this. So we'll try to fix the color cast a little bit. And, you know, maybe that looks good. And you can even back here kind of do a little bit of tint and temp adjustments as you see fit. But again, I don't think 250D is really the move for this one. So you could even use, you know, whatever, Agva color. That looks nice. Get rid of those. Tonal contrast, exposure. And again, I'm going to go over here and put the saturation up to like too much. Maybe like there. What's that? 65. It always seems to be like 60, 65. Looks good to me. Oops. And so that's how you'd play with that. And then you've got your film grain down here. And like I said, I really like the way that the film grain looks on Dehancer versus the OFX. That's just me. Halation, gonna turn that on. And let's see, you can see some of it right here. I've noticed halation, even if you do it in Resolve, gives the skin just a little bit of extra warmth, which looks really nice. You can see on off here. I really like that. So use halation if nothing else for your skin tones look nice. But you can see around these edges here how it comes on and off. We could find, I know I'm only using this one frame to show you all this, but I've got so many. Let's see, let's find a frame with a high, right here. So I've got Dehancer already figured out on this. Oh, actually, no, this one isn't Dehancer, but same effect. You turn on halation and see how it like pings off of these bright areas. That's what Dehancer's doing, and I can show you this later. But let's find another. We've been staring at the same clip forever. Find a new one. So this is one I like, and I've already, as you can see, I've already Dehancerized it, and we're using the 500T again, and I will, where's halation? Here it is. can see in her hair. There's that. And it just looks really nice. I don't like to use the bloom so much. See that glow. I don't know. I mean, it's taste, right? You can use it, you can not. If I kind of wanted that, I would probably just put a filter on, like I said. And then vignette, that I think that looks kind of nice. So if you want to set it, you know, change your size to, that's funny that it's kind of going back and forth. And then feather it out, change the aspect ratio a little bit. And that's how I would probably use the vignette. Just kind of darkens up the background, centers our attention on her. Great. Now the film breath, I can't really play it back, but the film breath I'm not going to use because it kind of just fluctuates like the color and exposure, and it's kind of strange. So I don't need that. And gate weave, again, is just not for me, but those are available to you. It's also got a false color module, which is pretty sick. They've released this for free, actually. So if you, this is a great tool. You kind of want your skin tones to be in this this kind of range generally. So you would just kind of adjust your exposure as needed and then turn off the false color. And I think that looks lovely. You can get some really excellent looks. Like I said, there's some weird ones in here, like the Chrome RSX 2. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. Was it the XRS? No, they all look, I mean, it depends. It totally depends on the shot that you're putting it on and kind of what you're going for. Let's see if we can find one that doesn't look good here. I mean, that one's a little green, but I bet we can correct that out, right? Oh, it's a little green because I still have the color head on. That looks great. That looks great. All right, I'll show you one that I know looks goofy. See, that's like very blue. And it's kind of difficult to correct out. But we've kind of done it there. That doesn't look horrible. Yeah, the FP100C is just very blue. Or like, what's another weird one? Chrome purple. Yeah, that's definitely a choice. You know. If, I don't know, maybe a weird dream sequence or something. But I would not personally use that. And again, the print exposure thing is super cool because they've tested these stocks so that they behave as if they were truly underexposed or overexposed. It's not just a value change. It's actually behaving like film would. So I really like that. And just so you know, like you have to edit, or you have to mess with the print area because the film, you know, film is two things. It's the print and it's the negative. And so I don't know if this print thing is, I don't think it's emulating 2383 or anything like that, but the tool is there. So yeah, like I'm just really in love with a lot of these looks. Specifically the 500D I think looks great. And like I said, this ortho look, it's pretty interesting. This Type 42, oh yeah, the black and white looks are kind of, you know, similar. Ooh, that's an interesting one. That could be like a dream sequence or something. Also, if I turn off the saturation back here. Yeah. So that's Dehancer. You know, it's a great tool. This is, you know, you can make it really subtle or not. You know, again, here we can see on the edge of her skirt, the halation. Doot, doot. And I think halation, honestly, when used tastefully, can look really great. This was a look I was matching. I literally color matched a still from a movie. So there's like ways that you would literally just like click. You would import a still from a movie and just go shot match to this clip. And so that's where I pulled that info. So here is kind of a film look that I was working on my own. And so, you know, I've done the exposure. I don't even think I have a color space transform in here. That's weird. Oh, because I have my LUT here. This is a LUT I made. What is funk? Does almost nothing. But here's like a halation node. I'm sure you may have seen this online on YouTube if you are looking at emulating halation, and it's literally just a color space transform to get us into linear. And then we do this thing here, and this is a layer node, and then you select your highlights to whatever degree, and then you adjust your sharpening to adjust the, oops, you don't want them ganged, to adjust the color, so somewhere in that kind of realm maybe, and then a color space transform back to your timeline, and that makes it so that you get a little bit of halation. So you can do that on your own if you like, but it's not Dehancer's algorithm. I don't know, maybe they're doing the same thing, but that's how you do that your own. Again, it can kind of get involved. But this is sort of like a generalized film look. And like I said, the grain algorithm that, or whatever they're doing in Resolve is not, it just feels like an overlay. Whereas if we were to do this in Dehancer, kind of a warmish look there. There's a lot of browns in here and stuff like that. And then the grain is turned on, and you can really send it on the grain. But even when you do, it seems like it's more part of the image. So, if the film grain, my two favorite things, obviously the halation looks really nice. I like it. We can turn it on and off, and you can super send it with the local parameter. I wouldn't recommend that. It looks a little too silly. But just a little bit. And there's also global diffusion if you just want it like the whole image to be looking kind of red. And if you want to know what you're doing, you've got mask mode here, and you can see the edges. But you kind of have to bounce between mask mode and not mask mode because I feel like it doesn't quite show you the whole image. But you can change the hue between orange and just clear white. Blue compensation, sure, why not? Again, I haven't really even played with this super a lot, but and this impact just dials it in. I haven't played with this a whole lot just because I've really been enjoying. I kind of got in, found a look I really liked, and I was like, yep, this is what I'd use. So we've got my film look here with my personal LUT that I made, and then so we're gonna grab that still, and then we'll hop into Dehancer. Little saturation on the back end. And make sure that our grain is on and our halation is on. A little extra halation, maybe just a little bit. That looks nice. And if I do the splitty, yeah, the Dehancer does look better than mine. So one more thing I'll do is I'll show you. This is the intro that you saw. Again, shot on the C500 Mark II. But this is with the Tamron 24-70, and I had a teleprompter on there, so I kind of had to zoom in. So I'm a little zoomed in more than I'd like, but this is C-Log 2 using the owl color picture profile, if you must know. And I'm going to use Dehancer on this, and that'll be what you saw at the beginning because I've been filming this kind of backwards. It's not log 3 actually, that is a problem. So what I can do is I'll do a color space transform back here, and because it is expecting Canon, this is a little better than if you were to try to put it into a different camera color space and all that, because while the color space might match, the colors themselves won't match. None on the tone mapping, and I'm going to boost the saturation up to 60 because I know I'm going to want that. And oops. And let's work with our Vision 3 because we've just been doing that so far. Boost the color density. EV the exposure down. Let's do right about there. Color density all the way up. I love the color density. I like it a lot. Let's get this dialed in. And I'm not really looking at the numbers here. I'm just kind of sliding things around to get it to where it looks nice to me. So I might not even adjust these at all. Let's see. Yeah, barely. Film grain, I'm going to leave where it is. I think it looks nice. And then halation, there's nothing really peaky in here, so I doubt it will actually change anything. It's kind of over here. You can see it changing stuff a little bit. So maybe if we add a little bit of local diffusion, what happens if we hit mask mode? Yeah, we're not seeing anything. Oh, we're on my shoulder. All right. So that's a little too much. Just a little leak. Just a touch of a leak. And I think now this is where, you know, programs are dumb. And I don't mean dumb like stupid. I just mean like they're not, it's not AI. So this is an incredibly high contrast edge. So if I had to guess, Dehancer thinks this is where brightness would happen, or this is a bright edge where it should technically be over here, or maybe over here. So that is something to think about. You know, if you're trying to stay realistic, you don't want to just chuck on a bunch of like, oh, it's halation, it looks filmy, because maybe around here that would be the case, but here not actually so much. But we'll leave a little bit on just because we like it. And what about global? A little bit of global. Again, change it, makes the skin tones look a little bit nicer. Not going to use bloom, but if I did, see how it just pops up the bright areas. Technically, that should be where... Oh, it does around my shoulder a little bit. You can see that doesn't look very realistic to me. So I haven't really been using the bloom, but maybe you like it. You know, maybe for a dreamy thing. Great. I can enable the vignette. So let's turn the feather all the way down so we can see it. Change the aspect ratio. Change the size. It's funny that it does that weird thing. And then feather it out. And now we're looking pretty good. Adjust the exposure up a little bit because that vignette's bringing us back down. And again, I want my bright side to be at about there. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I am liking that. So there you go. That's how you would use it in a couple different scenarios. So thank you for watching. I know that was incredibly long, but you know, I'm going off the cuff, and I thought it would be interesting to see before you, you know, obviously potentially make a purchase here. So that is my review. You can get some really amazing looks out of it, and you know, give it a try. Portrait 400. Oh, there's a look. You know, 800. And so that's the thing. Like I said earlier, I am going to try to test these against film stocks that I actually own, and we'll see kind of how close we can get. I have a Fuji X-T3, which they do support. So I'll use that to make sure that we're as accurate as possible. But for now, you know, even if they aren't accurate, they look pretty dope. Maybe I'll go with the Fuji. I kind of like the green. I like the green sort of shadow that we're getting there. I'm going to go with the Fuji. So the 400H is what you're going to have seen at the beginning of this. So these are my parameters for that look. And again, this is just a color space transform to log 3, add a log 2, and 10 points of saturation. So there you go. That's my Dehancer review and walkthrough. I hope that was informative, somewhat entertaining. I hope my voiceover didn't put you to sleep, because I know I've been told I've got both a face and a voice for radio. Yeah, I guess if you need voiceovers, let me know. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Find a better face to end on. Nope. Yeah, that's great. We'll do that. Take care.